Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and you're following the 3H's of the channel. In this video, I have 4 encounters from the backwoods that I think are terrifying. So, pull up a stump and let's get into it. Thank you for watching. So this didn't happen to me, but it happened to my grandparents, more specifically, my grandmother. So it was West Virginia, the early 1990s. Grandpa had to go on a work trip for a few days, so Grandma was home alone with the dog. This dog was annoying, to be honest, and hated absolutely everybody. Like seriously, this dog was the SRS of the canine world. But this particular night, something happened. It was a quiet night, a new moon. It was in the middle of a valley. Grandma hears a loud whistle kind of noise off in the distance. She was able to hear it over the TV, it was so loud. The dog immediately goes apeshit. Grandma goes onto the front porch. It's got a gate for the front door and a gate on the railing. The dog is barking at something. And then Grandma hears the whistle a second time. This time, the pitch seems to go up and down at random, as if whatever is making it is in motion or running. It sounds somewhat closer, but she can't really tell. She can't get the dog to go back inside, so she just goes back in herself and locks everything up. The dog remains on the porch and is barking at something. And then after a while, everything seems to settle down. In fact, for 2 hours, everything kind of returns to normal. She's just starting to kind of loosen up and think maybe it was just a weird noise. But then suddenly the whistle returns, and it's much closer. And then there's a second whistle on the other side of the house. Grandma sees a light out in the darkness. It's a few miles away. It flickers with the whistle. The dog is now going ballistic. The hairs on Grandma's neck stand up. Grandma gets a really bad feeling in her gut. She turns the TV off. She goes into the closet and grabs Grandpa's trench shotgun. Grandma does not go into the woods, of course. She wouldn't do that. But what she did do was barricade the doors. The whistles return. She runs for the attic. She climbs up and barricades herself up there. She falls asleep with the shotgun in her hands. From what my grandmother told me, there wasn't a single bird singing the next morning. It was also possibly the foggiest morning ever known to West Virginia. Her story ends on a particularly nasty note, though. She took a look at one of the porch windows and saw that one of the rocking chairs on the porch had been totally obliterated. The dog wasn't there. There was just a blood stain and a whole lot of gouges in the wood. She has no idea what the hell was out there that night. So this all happened the summer after high school. I was hanging out with my friends at a waterfront camp that one of my other friends' grandparents own. We were chilling out in the cabins, swimming, sailing, having a great time. There were 5 girls and 2 other guys besides me. This one night, it gets dark. We decide to watch Resident Evil in one of the cabins, just to watch horror movies and kind of laugh at how shitty and overdone it is. Suddenly, though, the power goes out. I look outside. The rest of the camps have power, but not ours. The girls begin to freak out. One of the guys is a string bean, but he has really good aim. He's good with guns. The other is a tank, but knows next to nothing. We leave the big guy with the girls, and I go outside with the other guy. We both brought our guns for target shooting. We just get outside to check the fuse box and immediately see that something has obviously been messing with the fuses. The components are all broken. The wires are all slashed. My friend turns on his flashlight and accidentally just points it into the woods. And what we see are dozens of pairs of eyes reflecting the light, just staring, pure white, from the woods around the cabin. I tell my friend to go back inside and get everyone ready to move to the boat. I figure it's the safest place. I figure, just instinctually, that those things don't like water. For a few minutes, I just stare out into the woods. They stare back. And then I hear my friends burst out of the back of the cabin. My friend yells to me to run for it. A unified howl seems to erupt from the woods. It almost sounds like the horde in Left 4 Dead. I run, and I try and shoot, but I don't even look to see if I'm hitting anything. My friends pile into the sailboat. My other friend takes a turn, firing at them while I try to rig the sails. Gunfire seems to deter them, but we can't tell if we're actually doing any damage or if it's just the loud noise and the flash. We never do find out, but we do manage to cast off. My friend takes the tiller and we shove off as I fire from the stern. The things come down to the water's edge, but don't touch the water. We anchor about 100 yards offshore, and my friend and I take turns just watching the beach. The things stalk the beach until about 6 a.m. and then just leave. We don't know what they were. We never saw them again, and we never told anybody because we just knew that we were going to sound crazy. So this one evening, I went fishing with a bro down on Beaver Creek in Kentucky, not far from the house. We got to the fishing spot around 5 p.m. or so. It was September of 2013. While fishing, we were burning them up and filling the stringer fast with big, plump, and delicious bluegill. We decided to build a fire and stay a bit later. I got 2 mag lights and a lantern. Screw the dark. We decided to try for some catfish. We accidentally kicked the tackle box over while messing with the fire. My bro goes around picking up what he can find. I'm still trying to keep the fire from going out. I look back, and he's walking off into the woods. I figured that he must need to go to the bathroom, so I just leave him be. And then I hear, from the woods, "Hey man, come and check out this." I think, sure, but it must be something cool because I gotta get this fire going. I get the mag light to try and go see what's up, but I can't find him. I keep hearing him further and further off. At one point I hear him say, "You won't believe this, hurry." I ask where he is, and then I ask him to shine his flashlight. I see a light way off in the distance, and then I think there's no way that he got that far in less than 10 minutes. I turn around to look at the fishing spot. I see the campfire, and I see not only the campfire, but my friend, who's back in his fishing chair. I feel very confused. I'm not sure who's who. I decide to go back to the fishing spot. My bro was acting normal, and then he looks at me and asks where I was. He says, "You must have had to take a dump, dude. You were gone for almost an hour." I say, "No way. It's been 10 minutes. And then he said no. He stepped into the trees to take a piss, and then when he came back, I was gone. And he waited, and waited, and waited for me, but I never came out until just now." Around this time, I heard something else shuffling around in the bushes, but it was getting further and farther away. I played it off like nothing happened, because I never would have heard the end of it from him if it was a prank, or if I was scared out in the woods. So I ended up saying, yeah, I had to go pretty bad. It must have been that crappy beef jerky that you got." But the truth is, the voice in the woods sounded exactly like my friend. His cadence, everything, was perfect. It sounded just like the way he would talk. We ended up staying later, and I'll tell you what happened there as well. So we continue fishing, but by this point, we're not having any more luck. The fish seem to have totally just left. It's like all of a sudden we're fishing in dead water. I was trying to ignore what happened earlier. I kept hearing someone walking back where I heard the voice, but I still tried to ignore it because I didn't want to seem like a coward. As I'm reeling in, I feel my hook snag on something big. Whatever it is not fighting my fishing rod. My reel just seems to be dragging it in. I think it's probably a log or something stupid like that. I get tired, It was huge. I let bro take a turn to try dragging it in. I still hear footfalls behind us. I'm hearing a lot of them now. I'm starting to actually get very nervous. And then a voice from behind us says, "Stop reeling." There's a man standing in the tree line right behind us. It ain't no business of Yun's. My bro stops and just drops the pole. We both stand there speechless. And then the guy says, "Best y'all get on out of here before trouble starts." We're like, "Yes, sir. Sorry to bother you. We'll go now." We pack up and leave. On the way out, we see a few more flashlights going off into the woods a bit in the direction that I heard the voice. I have no idea what they were doing. The rumor is around town that a boy went missing up there and was never found, and it all happened around that creek. We never went back there. I still fish, but if I get snagged up on something really big, I just cut my line and rehook. I don't want to know what's down there. So there's a place in Monticello, Kentucky called Beaver Creek. There's the resort, which is just a boring tourist location. But there's a more remote access road called Lynch Ford. A few fishermen go there, but there's never more than 10 cars at a time, at least in my short experience. I had a falling out with my family, so I moved here to get away from the insanity, to cure my boredom, and to fill my belly. I went looking for places to fish. I didn't know many people around here, so I had to look for places on my own. I pulled up Google Maps and searched around for creeks and rivers on the satellite image until I found Elk Creek, which then led me to Beaver Creek. I Googled further to find the resort. I didn't want to be around people though. I just needed to be alone. Really, I thought I had too much face time with my family as it were, and I wasn't really interested in socializing. So, I got in my car. I drove around sort of aimlessly until I found Lynchford Road, which ends at a remote section of Beaver Creek. For a whole month, I fished there, Monday through Thursday, reeling in massive bluegill, perfect for getting a thick enough cut of boneless meat to batter and deep fry like a true southerner. I also caught the occasional log perch, drum, and largemouth bass, but I was more focused on the gloriously tasty and bountiful bluegill. A lot of fishermen laugh at the thought of bluegill fishing since it's considered baby's first catch, but they taste better than any other freshwater fish that I've ever eaten. I got a real taste for these fish, and I felt compelled to return to the creek to keep my freezer full. I didn't like going on the weekends because teenagers often set up camp and partied all weekend, and that's exactly what I like to avoid. However, I decided to go on a Friday evening and noticed a distinct lack of humans. No one was there. I was thrilled. I went back Saturday evening and was again surprised that there was no one there. Cool. I had the entire creek to myself again, and I loaded myself down with delicious fish. At the time, I didn't find it at all suspicious in the least that the weekends were devoid of party folks. I took a few days off the other week to catch up on other evening duties like weed eating, mowing the lawn. I returned to Beaver Creek once again that Thursday. As I was driving my car down the winding, narrow county road to the creek, I met an oncoming truck that was barreling like mad and almost clipped my car. Assholes, I thought. I assumed they were young and drunk, on meth, or some combination of both, so I continued to my favorite spot. There's a not great dirt road that goes the length of the creek, but it's rutted out from people getting their trucks stuck in the mud, so it's impossible for me to drive my car with its precariously dangling crimped-up muffler and tailpipe down to the best fishing spots, so I always park my car in the gravel parking lot and just walk with all my gear down the dirt road. I got there around 6:30 p.m. and hoofed it down to a really nice spot where a small stream falls into the creek in a shallow waterfall. The spot is a bit shy of a half a mile from my car. On my way there, I noticed some weird-looking tracks in the mud. They looked human, but they were a bit skinny and curved terribly inward. I wasn't sure how to write that off as ordinary. The tracks lead off down the road and into the weeds toward the woods where I couldn't follow. I was a bit concerned about it, but I had old mace and old-timer hunting knife with me if anybody decided that they wanted a piece of me. So, I went onward to my little waterfall spot. I set up my fishing chair, and I dropped my line in the water. I wasn't getting a lot of bites at first, so my eyes began wandering. They went over the banks and the mountainside. Usually, when I'm out there, I see a lot of great blue herons fishing the banks and croaking their weird calls. I usually hear the screeching of blue jays, crickets ramping up for the evening, and all sorts of other nature sounds. But this time, it was much more quiet and subdued than usual. At this point, I began to worry a little, but perhaps it was just the cooler weather causing the lack of nature sounds. With the absence of party folks, other fishermen, and the locals that walk down to the creek and swim, I wondered if maybe there was something going on down there that everybody knew about but me. The odd tracks in the mud, the truck tearing ass away from the creek, and now the diminished sounds of nature were getting to me. But then, suddenly, the fish began to bite. One after the other, I reeled in some fat bluegill. I spent the next hour loading up my fish bucket. All anxiety left me. If you're a fellow fisherman reading this, you'll understand exactly what I mean. It was getting dark and difficult to see to pull out the hook from the fish. This was nothing new for me. I often stayed out a little after dark with no incident if the fish were still biting. As luck would have it, I was trying to grab hold of a particularly large and feisty bluegill when it finned my hand. I reacted and swore really loud. I shook off my ass-hattery and continued business as usual. Almost in reply, I heard a response from the woods behind me. It yelled out the same swear word that I did. It sounded male, but a very unfamiliar accent. It almost had an analog quality and voice to it, like a tape being played back, but not quite in my voice. I froze in place, still holding my reel with an iron grip. I started to panic internally, but I tried to stay calm and listen. A fish began tugging at my line, but I ignored it. I slowly reeled it in, missing the catch, and I laid my rod and reel down. I unclipped my knife from its holster on my belt, and I uncapped and turned the head of my mace in my pocket. I stood with my eyes fixed in the general direction that this voice came from. I strained to listen, and I could hear the faintest sound of rustling out there, but I couldn't see anything. With the tiniest bit of sunset left, I grabbed my mag light out of my backpack. No sooner did I grasp my flashlight, I heard what sounded like snoring coming from the direction I heard the voice and rustling, but it sounded like two people snoring or grunting, but nearby, in tandem almost, still having that tape-recorded quality. It kept getting closer. I grew a pair and clicked on the flashlight, but I was unprepared for what I would see. I started scanning the light in front of me, and I worked my way outward toward the noises. At first, I caught a glimpse of a white humanoid bobbing slowly behind the trees. I was scared out of my mind. My hands were shaking so hard that I couldn't keep the flashlight trained on the thing very well. The thing then hobbled to a point where the trees were skinny enough to see past, and I got a good look. The only thing I can even begin to compare it to is that it looked like fairly young, conjoined twins. It had two almost human heads, a broad torso, and two messed up legs. It was naked and pale, and it was staring directly at me, one of the heads still making that faint snoring noise. As I stood there, shaking terribly, it drew in a deep breath and made the most awful, two-headed howling noise I've ever heard. It lunged towards me a bit, then its heads turned to look at each other, and they sort of almost chuckled. I was freaking out harder than I ever thought I even could. Never in my life have I ran so fast, yet it felt like I was taking forever to get to my car. It was dark at this point, and it just felt like that the woods were getting bigger, darker, and deeper. I was trying not to trip or slide in the mud, or fall in the ruts in the road. Once I got close to the car, I looked back with the flashlight, and I saw this thing walking across the road to the spot where I left my fish and gear. I stopped, only for that moment. Then I got in my car and peeled the hell out of there as fast as I possibly could. That shit was just so unnatural to me. I don't know if it was just an inbred Siamese hillbilly thing, or if it was some terrible hellspawn. Laugh if you want, but if you were there and you saw it, you'd run like hell too. I just don't want to see that thing ever again. So what did you think of those encounters? Was there one in particular that stuck out to you? If that's the case, let me know which one it was down in the comments. As always, if you have encounters of your own, I have an email in the description that you can send them to if you'd like to. Also in the description are links to a PayPal and Patreon if you would like to donate to the channel that way, and memberships and super thanks are here on YouTube. And with all of that, I hope you will join me on Friday. If you haven't already, I hope you like and subscribe, and I'll put up a couple of videos here that you can check out something else if you'd like to. And with that, I'll see you Friday. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching.